I'm the art director.
Heartily welcome to this gallery. Thank you for coming, Ileana Pintilie and Andrei, Sorin, Cosmin and Ciprian. This evening we are doing an occasion on Vienna Art Week, a kind of small review on modern Romanian art, and we will show the contemporary version of Romanian art. And during the lecture or the talk you will see that many influences of contemporary art experiments are coming from the 60s and 70s from Romania, but we don't know because the Iron Curtain was there, and behind the Iron Curtain they were more informed, I think, than we have been informed what is happening there. So I will give the word to Ileana for the introduction.
Yes, in fact, my intention is not to make a lecture because it's not the context. There are some slides, some images with a selection of one of the most important works from a group of artists. In fact, there are two groups, 111 and Sigma, that collaborate mid-60s, and the first group was with Roman Cotoșman, Ștefan Bertaran and Constantin Flondor, was much more oriented through constructivism and abstract art. They were very interested in study of new direction in mathematics, cybernetics, bionics, technology, and so on. And they try to put all these topics in their works. So they gain national recognition in '67, and in Bucharest, and in '68, and in '69 they were invited at the first constructivist biennial in Nuremberg. It was a moment of a very important moment for all these artists, because they were international now, and there are some opportunities, like the name. They 111. They keep their own individuality, and they presented works signed by each of them, that in environment, together in an environment. This was one of the major pieces of this period, Quaternar.
You can come here to see also the pictures.
It was one of the most interesting work of Cotoșman.
Works with nature as a subject. I think there is definitely a link to the Sigma group, as far as I can see. And it's not by chance that you are showing works from Flondor here.
Yes, Flondor was the link. Yeah. And Ileana also, in a way, with art history classes and some other teachers. Yeah. But Flondor was a link for us, because we had this habit to go in his house or his studio to watch movies from his archive, to drink a wine and discuss.
And so being involved directly in some of his own late projects. I mean, he considers us like partners, not just like students. This was the main open-minded.
It was also a routine coming from Sigma times, because they in the High School of Arts of Timisoara they used to do that, to erase the boundary between their personal studios and the class and pedagogical things. They work together with students to find answers together, teachers and students.
Is Flondor still working with you, or is there a dialogue, or how does it work now?
From time to time,
he done the last performance with us in 2016 here in Vienna, Light and Wind, and we done also film, and this was very interesting because we part to have an exhibition together, and in the car we discussed about the possibility of doing this action performance. He said, I don't like the term performance, I like the action name, like the action is Vienna maybe.
But let's do it.
And he was agree with our idea, because one of the medium was the flower. And he used this medium a lot in the 70s. And he started to to change a bit our way of the first idea, and we put this concept together in the car, 5 hours from Timisoara till Vienna. That was quite interesting. How young and very quick he thought of all the details.
For me was also a surprise. I was just a student, and we had a kind of still life study to make. It was in the field of geometry and symbol, and there were some objects, and we paint, and he was happy with some of the results, and he said, you are a prologue now. A prologue means the later group of Flondor, and he said, this is like prologue, and after a while he said, come with us in a camp to paint together. And I was young, I was 10 when prologue was born. It was a huge surprise for me.
But did you have also contact with Bertalan and with Tulkan?
Oh yes, we met him in a university. He came, I remember, from Germany with a bag like that, and he said he've done some lectures. He didn't been a teacher in university. He've done some
Invited.
Yes. And he said to us, the main and the most important thing is to travel. And he parted.
He was really very, very original and strong.
Of course, all the
personality.
students. Yes, excuse me.
And for the students, I think it was a good experience to meet him
Fresh air.
in a sort of experimental art course. So Flondor invited him to do this.
And Tulkan also was our teacher in video and photo. And
There is also a book Ileana has made about Stefan Bertalan, if you want to have a look. And if you have questions to the artist or to Ileana, please feel free. If not, please have a nice evening and thanks for coming.
So it's the second book. Show it. The first one is a sort of monography, and the second one is about body of works quite unknown, because he was very, I don't know, he keep, they keep,
Special person.
yeah, very secret. And after his disparition, or at the end, a collector managed to buy these works, and we decided to make a book, and it is about experimental photography. Experimental because on one way he tried to do some macro photographs with microscope and so on. It was not so easy at the time in the 70s, and on the other hand he had an idea to make a sort of superpositions of different photographs, re-photograph in a sort of slide, and there are in fact a sort of performance, let's say. The result was not done at the beginning, it was a sort of experiment. Yeah.
What I want to say, this book is better like the creativity of the pictures, even without any technology from the West side, without Photoshop, without digital stuff. They've done with less, more. This I try to mention. If you look at this book, you will see how much I can show you some.
In fact, photography inspired him for different other projects, and so it was a sort of.
And he combined the drawings.
Yeah, very close to drawing.
With the land art, we are very involved with the observational, and our teacher, the main teacher actually, I think for all these groups is the nature. So we are still working in plein air most of us at the beginning, but also using the nature like a partner too, not just a mimesis.
And this is what Agnes Schwana mentioned before when she had a look at the book, that we are doing such things today in a white cube and say it's high art, but they did it outside, and this is a kind of charming approach.
Yeah. Bertrand was living for how long? 1 month or half a year with sunflower?
30 days. It was a strange idea. I mean, it was a sort of involvement, life involvement in this action.
Looking at this, and just get this, I'll show you our postcard for this. Then an experiment in the forest, and I quite now I have a kind of, this is the horizon. I mean, this will be in a Wittgenstein house. Another.
Yeah. I see.
Okay, nice to pass.
So if you have more questions, please. But it's nice to hear that part of these artists are in MUMOK collection, and
we're very glad that we got works from the Sigma Group on the occasion of the Natural Histories exhibition, which was already a year ago. And we had the possibility to get a selection of works from Tulkan, Catalan, and from Flondor, which was bought by the Ludwig Foundation, which was a good opportunity for us to enlarge our part of the Eastern European art from modernism. And we will have an exhibition which will be opened next week. It's called Painting with Method, and we are able now to include into this exhibition also the work from Flondor, some of the works from Flondor which we had for that, which fit to this painting exhibition. So that's quite a good opportunity that this art gets visible for the future.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure that it will be more visible in the future too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I still have one question, and I came late. Maybe you talked about it already, so please forgive me. But these artists that are kind of reflecting on perception, you very often find out that they end up working in nature. This is a phenomenon which you can see, and I wonder why. Can you discuss why artists that are kind of reflecting on perception so clearly, they very often go into nature. For experimental art, you know, conceptual art like this one.
Why in nature? Why perception all the time? I think, for me, for us, I think, no, for me, it's related with what I said about this hysteria after the 90s. And the reaction at this hysteria of novelty and originality, I felt that I have to go back somewhere. And it was a little bit like aesthetic,
Aesthetic.
not aesthetic, but aesthetic. Yes, to cut this too much information and to try to go back to something deeper, to poetry, to I don't know, to something essential, and the nature is. I think
it sounds a bit like retiring from the kind of busy world. But do you think that these
no, it's not. Excuse me. It's not like Gauguin.
Yeah.
We didn't go to the Iceland.
I know this. No, do you think that these questions can be better solved or studied in nature?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was a little game there. We have these games. We'll have one also in Wittgenstein project in December. In this game, each one of us was the viewer. I have a point where we look to the forest and try to find the horizon, and the other one were two other colleagues were the hands. And the one who stays says, put the line there, no, down, down.
Was the line of the hill, I mean the horizon?
The surround, the 360 surround of horizons of the particular place there.
So each one had a different.
But it's of course linked with the perception. Yeah.
May I say a little like a joke? I mean, it's like in the Balkanic part. Two are working and one is telling you what to do. So I've been painting these lines with Andrei, and Ciprian was far away, and he said, go up, you go down with the line, and at the end we've done this film and photos.
But the idea was to have a 360s together experience. All the things are already made by singular artists in a way, or not identical, but in this way. But our idea was to be together in this kind of experience of together perception of reality, time, space.
Unfortunately, was a forest. The forest was linked with another friend who had the forest, because normally when you do this sign, they will cut the tree. So it's another detail.
It was in Vienna, right?
No, it was in Romania, in south Romania.
Okay. But you did some action in Wienerwald as well, and there are no trees anymore.
So maybe it's an escape to the hidden paradise.
I want to say another thing. We have here two drawings by Flondor, are made in 67, and are linked also with kind of observational
the
studies.
abstractization of the nature, in fact, is also a concept of.
It was also a surprise for us that Flondor accepted. Some days before we came here, he said, "Okay, I will give you 2 works and some prints to if you will have a talk about us, let's have it there."
It's very generous. I mean, in our relation with him.
He's still young.
Sometimes more young than us.
And his reactions are very, very spontaneous. I mean, you can't imagine, because I have other friends the same age and they answer me after 1 month. And he's very prompt. He is very communicative. I mean, he's very young, very free. I think for us, art in this period was the freedom. Without even in political situation and social situation in that period.
Which is kind of paradise freedom.
But sometimes political is it's related to the nature,
I think
as in your exhibition.
But I think that the reason why they were working in Timisoara, there was no observation that was that strong from the communist regime. I think there was kind of freedom to be free to develop some projects without being observed all the time. I think that is so. In that context, the wood or the landscape becomes a kind of political context.
Yes.
So this is always a question of the context and of the situation, political situation. So this is not a kind of romantic retirement in the woodlands, but it's more a kind of counterposition. It's like similar like with the subject of cosmos, because a lot of artists, Julius Korda is just one example, but a lot of others were dealing with the subject of the cosmos, but the cosmos was considered as a kind of counter-reality, a kind of utopian space where kind of society could work, which did not work in reality. So I think this is also a kind of protection. It's a kind of utopian idea which is embedded in the context of a certain political situation. You also have to see this together.
Yeah.
So also not only in Eastern European countries, but also in America or ex-Yugoslavia, the countryside was a kind of place for counterculture. It was an oppositional behavior against consumerism, against urbanism,
in the 70s.
against the Vietnam War, the American system. All these kind of things came together. I think this has to be seen together. Discuss this subject of wood landscape. And also a little bit earlier, when the land art was a kind of oppositional, somehow an oppositional step out of the art scene, of the urban art scene, out of the institutional art spaces, to get a new kind of area in a kind of critical approach, you could say. But a lot of things could be said about that.
Yes, but I think also a new perception. For instance, if Robert Smithson really does a spiral, in the water, which you can only see from the aeroplane, it's a new perspective, and the spiral, of course, is a very interesting motif.
But what's exciting with it when we speak about Robert Smithson, because he was also fighting against the idea of an romanticism. He said when he's going to the landscape to do this spiral or other kinds of works in the landscape, it's a kind of urban behavior. It was also sponsored by one of the most successful taxi entrepreneurs by Robert Scull, I think. And on some of the sketches and drawings you can find also this kind of annotation. That it's a kind of capitalist, enabled through capitalist structures. And he really he was standing with it, not just making a kind of romantic turn out of it.
Probably not the same in Romania.
Probably, yes, for sure.
Could have been an escape from the regime to be free to create.
Yes, maybe. And I think what is also important with Sigma that you were mentioning, they were working with bionics, with kinetics, with mathematics, with architecture, so with a lot of scientific stuff, which was sharp in a kind of critical intellectual approach. And this is something which is always kind of threatened by a regime which is having a kind of totalitarian structure. So I think this is the main opposition. That as soon as artists start to work with stuff which makes you think, which enables you to reflect in a critical way on the things you are living and working, then it's a kind of threatened at the same time by a kind of totalitarian system. This is a kind of context which makes the political sharpness, I think. As far as I learned from Flondor.
But anyway, he made also some films, you remember?
Yeah.
He put last year a film, Monday, Tuesday, the 7 days, with a small, banal reality. In fact, he was not arrested, but
but it was a film about Securitate.
About Securitate, yeah.
We were talking about. He was presenting it. Also, it's also now part of our collection. This film video.
It's interesting. This
yes,
one,
it's very interesting because it's quite different from the other works from Noima Group. Not dealing with nature at first sight, but dealing with kind of observation, to observe and being observed. This is I think, the main subject of the film. It's quite exciting.
Yeah, and has a tension because he knows about all the problems, and in the same time you can see the face of his daughter and the family and so on and so on.
It's a very courageous piece.
And
so
very, like a simple fact, not
it's not an artificial,
not elaborated.
pathetic art, but not elaborated. It's very literal, so to say.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.